So picture this. It's 1994, and South Africa is just emerging from one of the most brutal systems of racial segregation the world has ever seen. The challenge they faced was just monumental. How do you take a country that was deliberately shattered into pieces and somehow build one unified nation?
I mean, that's the central question, right? How in the world do you unite a country when its entire design for decades was meant to keep people apart? It's a question that really gets to the core of what it even means to be a nation. Okay, so let's dig in. To really get what South Africa was trying to build, we first have to understand what it was trying to tear down. We have to look at this nation that was, in so many ways, engineered to fail.
You see, apartheid wasn't just about separate benches or water fountains. No, it was a formal geographic and political system of division. The government created these things called homelands, like Bophuthatswana for the Tswana people, or Transkei for the Xhosa. This literally stripped Black South Africans of their citizenship and crammed them into just 13% of the country's land. And this system, it seeped into everything. It was a complete architecture of inequality. We're talking no voting rights for Black citizens, education systems that were not only separate but deliberately made inferior, laws that put a hard ceiling on the jobs non-white people could ever hope to get. It was a machine built to create and maintain division, top to bottom. So, confronted with that, where do you even start? Well, the first step was a massive symbolic project, a huge effort to forge a brand new, shared national identity that could include everyone. This was the dream of the Rainbow Nation.
And the moral compass for this whole project, the guiding light, was actually laid out decades earlier by Nelson Mandela, way back in 1964 during his trial. This vision of a democratic, free, harmonious society, it wasn't just some political slogan. It became the very foundation for the new South Africa.
And that vision got a name, a really powerful one, popularized by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the Rainbow Nation. What a brilliant idea, right? It took the country's incredible diversity, the very thing apartheid tried to use as a weapon of division, and reframed it as its greatest strength, a source of pride and unity. They even used the national anthem as a tool for this. Check this out. The new anthem is literally a fusion. It blends Nkosi Sikelel' Africa, which was a hymn of protest during apartheid, with D-Stem, the anthem from the old regime. It's sung in 5 different languages. It's this perfect symbol of weaving a painful past and a hopeful future into one single voice. The new leaders were also incredibly smart about using the power of sport. Now, rugby in South Africa, that was the sport of the white Afrikaner establishment. But in 1995, when South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup, they saw a chance to turn it into something totally different, an engine for national unity. And wow, the effect was just electric. The Minister of Sport at the time, Steve Tshwete, said that win created a moment of unity the country had never, ever seen before. And of course, there was that iconic image of Nelson Mandela walking onto the field wearing the captain's rugby jersey, a gesture of reconciliation seen all around the world. But look, symbols and feel-good moments, as powerful as they are, can't fix a broken country on their own. So alongside this symbolic project, there had to be something else, a radical, institutional project to completely rewire the machinery of the state. And this meant a complete and total overhaul. The first piece was a new democratic constitution, still seen as one of the most progressive in the world. But the second piece was something really unique, something designed to look the country's painful past right in the eye. And that was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or TRC. Now, instead of going for widespread prosecutions, which could have easily tipped the country into a civil war, the TRC chose a different path. They called restorative justice. The main goal wasn't punishment. It was about uncovering the truth of what happened in public to help the nation heal. So, how'd it work? Well, it had 3 main parts. First, victims finally got a platform to tell their stories in public, to have their pain seen and heard. Second, perpetrators of violence, and this is key, from all sides, could apply for amnesty, but only if they gave a full public confession. And third, the commission would recommend reparations for victims. And just to give you a sense of the sheer scale of this, the TRC got 7,112 applications for amnesty. Just let that number sink in. That's thousands of individual acts of violence, bombings, torture, assassinations that were confessed to out in the open. But was it fair? You know, this is where it gets really complicated.
Amnesty was a political deal, a compromise made to avoid more bloodshed. But as you can see, a majority of South Africans, across every racial group, felt it was unfair to the victims. For a lot of people, trading justice for truth was a really bitter pill to swallow. But perhaps the most revolutionary change, the absolute cornerstone of the new system, was democracy itself, universal suffrage. For the very first time, every single adult citizen had the right to vote. This one change caused the voter roll to expand by almost 200% for that first election in 1994. It was a fundamental, permanent shift of power. So, after all that, the symbols, the new laws, the Truth Commission, where does South Africa stand today? Well, it's a really complex picture. You've got incredible progress on one hand and deep, persistent challenges on the other. It's very much an unfinished journey. And one of the most glaring of those challenges is economic inequality. I mean, just look at these poverty rates from 2015. They show the economic ghost of apartheid in black and white. While less than 1% of white-headed households were in poverty, almost half, 47% of black-headed households were. That economic system has just been incredibly tough to dismantle. And that lingering inequality, it's not just a statistic. It's fueling new tensions. You see it in things like the #FeesMustFall student protests. This was a movement led by the born free generation, kids who never lived under apartheid, but are now fighting its economic legacy, demanding education they can actually access. And even after decades of democracy, you still see these moments of raw, ugly public racism bubble to the surface. Incidents like these, all from 2016, protests over racist hair policies at a school, viral social media posts, they're all reminders that changing laws is one thing, but changing hearts and minds is a much, much longer game. And this really gets to the core paradox of post-apartheid South Africa. The symbolic project? In many ways, it was a huge success. It created a real sense of shared national identity. But the institutional legacy of apartheid, that deep structural inequality in wealth, land, and opportunity, that stuff is deeply entrenched and is a much harder fight. So, in the end, South Africa is still wrestling with its own history. It's struggling to overcome not just the symbols of the past, but the incredibly stubborn institutional foundations of that divided system. And it leaves us with this final, massive question, one that's not just for South Africa, but for any society trying to move past injustice. Once the new flags are raised and the new laws are written, what does it really take to heal the deep, painful divisions of the past?